And this is Mick, the Doctor of Digital.
And welcome to Love Letters. Love Letters are a collection of love stories of people get lost, get crazy, and disoriented in the name of love. And of course, another week, another great episode on Love Letters. Do good men decide to be useful? The truth about most men. Wow, interesting topic, Mr. Meg.
I think so.
So, how can you introduce this topic to us?
Well, Piers Eggleston wrote an interesting article on Substack, and his basic thesis is clear. He maintains that inside every good man is a burning desire to be useful. Eggleston writes a column entitled The Love Gap, which aims to explore overlooked truths between men and women to rebuild understanding and mutual respect. I think his goal is in line with the aim of our podcast, and he maintains that one truth is that we men don't explain ourselves very well. That's a point worth considering, so I'll travel down that road to see where it leads. He takes issue with Freud, of whom he says he may not have known what women want. Freud's own views on relationships between men and women were deeply rooted in his psychoanalytic theories, often emphasizing unconscious desires and early childhood experiences. He believed that such relationships were heavily influenced by the Oedipus and Electra complexes, where children develop unconscious sexual desires for the opposite sex parent while viewing the same sex parent as a rival. For Freud, adult romantic relationships were shaped by these early dynamics, with men seeking women who resembled their mothers and women seeking father figures as a way to resolve these unresolved conflicts. He also posited that women's relational motivations were tied to penis envy, suggesting that they sought men to compensate for perceived biological inferiority, while men's desires were driven by castration anxiety and the need to assert dominance. Though groundbreaking for his time, Freud's ideas on gender dynamics were often speculative, reductionistic, and reflective of his own era's biases, and they've been widely critiqued and expanded upon by modern psychology. Freud should be considered since he's a major thinker in psychology, but true enough, Sigmund does not explain all that much to us as contemporaries. Pierre's article maintains that what most men want is to be useful, ideally to a woman. He recognizes but downplays the predominance of male scumbags as a tiny minority that give all men a bad name. He acknowledges the deadbeats. He states, for the antithesis, consider a man who feels useless, unemployed men, men issued with divorce papers, homeless men, men in prison, male drug addicts, fathers denied access to their children, lost louts hanging around causing mischief. Men who feel useless are taboo because they make everyone uncomfortable. One aspect of his statement would be to object to the corrupt family court system and not assume fathers are denied access almost automatically, but they are. Several states and some foreign countries are more forward looking and assuming 50-50 custody, but perhaps Eccleston has not had that personal access to the tragedy of the family courts. In any case, Piers is referring to the other 95% of ordinary good men that most of us are lucky enough to have in our lives. Maybe for others, it's your father, your brother, friends, or sons. If you have a husband, hopefully he's a good man, Eccleston says. Good men play for their value and the opportunity to be cherished. Even when men get it wrong, their intention is to provide and be of useful service. For example, he illustrates his point with a picture of a guy bringing a cactus plant in a heart-shaped container to his gal while she frowns. In conclusion, the picture is indicative of what a good man would likely do to at least try his best to please a woman.
Certainly. So, Mr. Mick, does civilization show ordinary men trying to be useful to women?
Eccleston maintains that the entire history of human civilization is one of ordinary men trying to be useful directly or indirectly to women. The idea that human civilization progressed because men sought to be useful to women, driving innovation and comfort, can be illustrated through historical examples. While Piers points a broad, somewhat playful characterization, we can explore concrete moments where male efforts, often tied to providing for or impressing women, contributed to societal advancements. Here's a few examples. The agricultural revolution. The shift from hunter gatherer societies to settled farming communities is one of the earliest leaps in civilization. While both men and women played roles, evidence from early Neolithic sites and modern day Turkey suggests men often took on tasks like clearing land and domesticating animals, efforts that provided stable food supplies. This stability allowed women to focus on child rearing and early textile production, indirectly pushing families out of caves into permanent homes. The desire to create a secure, appealing environment for mates and offspring arguably fueled this transformation. The wheel in transportation. Invented in Mesopotamia, the wheel and revolutionized trade and travel. Imagine a Sumerian man crafting a cart to haul goods more efficiently, perhaps to bring home resources or gifts to a partner. Archaeological finds depict a wheeled vehicle showing how this innovation spread. It's not hard to see this as a practical male effort to be useful, easing labor and enhancing domestic life, eventually paving the way for roads and cities far beyond cave dwelling. Medieval castles and comfort. In feudal Europe, lords built stone castles not just for defense, but to signal status and provide for their families. Take the construction of Windsor Castle in England, begun in 1070 by William the Conqueror. While it was a fortress, later additions like fireplaces and tapestries, documented in royal inventories, show a shift towards comfort, often driven by the presence of noble women. Men didn't just stop at shelter, they upgraded it with scatter cushions of their own era, reflecting a desire to impress or care for their households. The development of steam power and electricity grids ties directly to the mention of hot water and electricity. Consider James Watt, whose steam engine improvements empowered textile mills and later homes. In the 1880s, Thomas Edison's electric lighting was marketed to households, with ads often targeting women managing domestic spaces. Men engineered these systems, arguably to make life easier and more appealing to women, elevating society from rudimentary existence to one of modern convenience. Alexander Graham Bell's invention of the telephone was initially a tool for communication, but quickly became a domestic staple. Bell reportedly first called his assistant saying, "Watson, come here, I need you." But early marketing pitched it as a way to connect families. Men like Bell created a device that shrank distances, make it easier to maintain relationships, something women in Victorian society often valued for social and family ties. This is a leap from cave area grunts to instant connection. These examples show a pattern, whether through labor, invention, or ambition, often work to improve conditions that benefited women directly or indirectly. In conclusion, while perhaps oversimplified a bit, women also innovated and labored. The male drive to be useful has undeniably shaped the comforts of today's world, from mud huts to microgrids.
Definitely. So, Mr. Mick, do men have innate reproductive use similar to women?
No, they don't. And the thing is, the contrast should be clear. Men bring nothing of innate use. Men strive to make something of themselves because they are less to begin with, either developing personal value or failing in life's ultimate task. No woman wants a useless man, least of all to make a baby with. Men have to develop game in the struggle on life's tree to pass on their genes. Piers speculates that 60% of all men who have ever lived had no children of their own. Although the data is not entirely reliable, it's a question worth considering. Have fewer men reproduced their genes? The statistic that 60% of all men who ever lived have no children of their own is a claim that's difficult to verify with absolute certainty because it involves estimating reproductive success across all of human history, hundreds of thousands of years, where direct data is sparse or non existent. However, I can break this down based on what we know from anthropology, history, and population genetics to assess its plausibility. In evolutionary terms, human reproduction has never been evenly distributed. Studies of genetic lineage, like those analyzing Y chromosome diversity, suggest that historically a smaller proportion of men than women contributed to the gene pool. This is often attributed to social structures. One man with multiple mates, warfare, and high male mortality, where dominant or successful men had many children while others had none. For example, a 2015 study published in Genome Research found that around 8,000 years ago, the ratio of reproducing women to men may have been as high as 17 to 1 in some populations due to bottlenecks and cultural practices. Over time, this imbalance likely lessened, but it supports the idea that many men didn't reproduce. If we extrapolate across all human history, say from Homo sapiens emerging 300,000 years ago to now, billions of men have lived. Estimates of total humans ever born range from 100 to 115 billion. Roughly half would be male, so 50 to 57 billion men. In pre modern societies, hunter gatherer, agricultural, infant mortality was high, and social hierarchies often limited mating opportunities for lower status males. Anthropologists like Robin Dunbar suggest that in small scale societies, alpha males and their kin might monopolize reproduction, leaving many men childless. In medieval Europe, for instance, celibacy, that is, monks, and economic barriers to marriage further skewed the statistics. However, 60% feels like a round speculative number rather than a precise one. Modern data shows more balanced reproduction. For example, in the US today, about 20 to 25% of men over 40 have no children, but history isn't modern. A 2010 study by a group studying Y chromosome variation estimated that 20 to 40% of men in any generation might have left no genetic descendants, which spikes in certain areas. Averaging that all over time could push the number higher, maybe towards 50 to 60%, but it's still a guess. Without a definitive source tracing this exact stat, it's likely a simplification or an extrapolation from such research. Plausible, given historical mating patterns? Proven? No, because we lack comprehensive records. It does say and suggest, though, that many men have not been able to reproduce. In conclusion, there are many more female ancestors than male predecessors since women choose and most men lose, which is why evolutionary biologists describe humanity as a multi-millennial breeding experiment run by women.
Very well said, Mr. Mick. Very well said. How is male drive coded into endocrine systems and cultural patterns?
The idea that the male drive towards useful purpose is not a choice, but rather an intrinsic trait rooted in biology and reinforced by culture is an interesting perspective that blends evolutionary psychology, endocrinology, and sociology. Let's unpack this step by step. The masculine endocrine system likely refers to the role of hormones like testosterone, which has been shown to influence behavior, motivation, and even cognition in men and to a lesser extent women. Testosterone is often linked to traits like competitiveness, risk taking, and a drive for status or achievement, qualities that could align with a useful purpose. Evolutionary biologists argue that this hormonal profile was shaped over millennia because it conferred survival and reproductive advantages. For example, in ancestral environments, men who pursued goals like hunting, protecting, or building were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. This suggests a feedback loop where the endocrine system rewarded purposive action with feelings of satisfaction via dopamine and social reward status within the group. Testosterone interacts with the brain's reward systems, amplifying the drive to achieve tangible outcomes. Studies show that men often experience a surge in testosterone after completing challenging tasks, reinforcing this behavior as a hardwired tendency. This isn't to say men can't choose what purpose to pursue, but the need for purpose might feel non negotiable, like hunger or thirst, because it's baked into the physiological machinery. The biological impulse doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's amplified and directed by cultural patterns. Across history and societies, masculinity has often been tied to roles that demand utility: warrior, provider, builder, leader. These archetypes aren't arbitrary. They likely emerge as cultural exaggerations of biological predispositions, creating a self reinforcing cycle. Boys are often raised with messages, explicit or implicit, that their worth is tied to what they do. Be a man frequently means be useful, whether through strength, skill, or provision. This isn't universal, cultures vary, but it's a recurring theme from Spartan warriors to modern entrepreneurs. Think of a likely first question you ask about a man: what do you do? The question presumes your worth is reflected by your job. For a woman, a more likely question is to ask is, do you have children? Many societies ritualize the transition to manhood through tests of purpose, hunting a lion, enduring hardship, or mastering a craft. These practices don't create the drive, they channel it into culturally approved forms. Even today, think of the cultural obsession with male hustle culture, careers, fitness, legacy. Men who lack purpose are often depicted as lost or unmoored, suggesting society still sees purpose as a masculine cornerstone. Calling it not a choice might overstate the case slightly. Individuals can resist or redirect these impulses, but it captures how visceral and automatic the drive can feel. Men who ignore it often report restlessness, depression, or a sense of futility, which could hint at a mismatch between their biology, culture, and their lived experience. Think of it like an itch. You can choose not to scratch, but the urge doesn't vanish. On the flip side, this framing risks oversimplification. Not all men feel this drive equally. Genetic variation, upbringing, and personal temperament play huge roles, and women too pursue purpose. Though the cultural and biological lenses might differ, less testosterone driven, more socially flexible expectations. The male drive toward useful purpose could be seen as a synergy of nature and nurture, a biological engine, the endocrine system, and turned by evolution, tuned by it, given direction and meaning by cultural software. It's not that men decide to want purpose, it's that purpose seeking feels like a default state, hard to opt out without consequence. Eccleston summarizes: men who channel their energy in disciplined, creative ways are useful to the world and attractive to everyone. In conclusion, whether that's liberating or burdensome depends on the man and the context, but it's a compelling lens on masculinity worth wrestling with.
How about the guy with little to no desire to be useful?
These guys who don't find their groove or lose it fail far, fast, and often fatally. As serotonin levels plummet, the human brain's ability to regulate mood, sleep, and impulse culture control falters, often plunging individuals into a state of profound despair and dysfunction. This collapse can be particularly devastating for men whose suicide rates are twice as high as women's, reflecting a stark gender disparity in mental health outcomes. The neurotransmitters decline erodes their capacity to cope with stress or maintain basic functionality, leaving them increasingly vulnerable to overwhelming hopelessness. Societal pressures, such as expectations of stoicism or reluctance to seek help, may exacerbate this trend, amplifying the lethal consequences of untreated mental health struggles in men. Addressing this crisis demands urgent attention to both biological and cultural factors driving these alarming statistics. Piers adds, don't be fooled by appearances. The more tough and forceful the man, the more he needs the counterbalancing energy and depth of female power. There does seem to be something lamentable about that macho man who often is insecure and covers it up by acting aggressively. The contrast is clear for a good man. Good men give their entire existence over to the betterment of the women in their lives. Good men love hard and deeply without hedging or fencing off their hearts. Good men know that their place is to serve the woman they love. Just because women aren't here to serve men doesn't mean the reverse can't be true. The rules for men are different. There are those little things that a man does, and even if seemingly insignificant, a man feels a sense of worth by doing small tasks for a girl or a woman. Men don't do these things to keep women down or because they think women can't do them. It's because they cherish women so much. They want to be of service and recognized for making a woman's life easier. Piers adds a man hack. Recognizing a man's usefulness makes him glow inside. Recognition of a man's useful service is the treasure beyond price. If a woman allows the men in her life to serve her and recognizes their service, she gives them the greatest gift there is. Good men are accustomed and ready to be assigned a duty or a mission. Of course, women can serve in the military, but there is a reason traditionally men were almost exclusively the warriors protecting others. In conclusion, good men enjoy the acknowledgement that they are at least trying, and if recognition does not come quickly, we quietly double down, go harder, dig deeper, push through.
Definitely. So, is there a problem with the pedestal?
Yes, the pedestal thing is an issue. Generally, the romantic view maintains that a good man wants to put his partner on a pedestal. However, for peers, He actually wants to be the pedestal. In their heart of hearts, men are soppy, devoted, and romantic in ways that leave women behind in girlhood, that women leave behind in girlhood. There are male female cultural narratives and behaviors. Men kneel to propose to a woman, men kneel to their queen before going off on their mad, heroic quests. These archetypal patterns run deep. Men never stop kneeling before the goddess. Piers continues, shaming men for their unconscious eagerness is easily done, rather a cheap trick and especially devastating in the bedroom. Husbands want to help their wives have orgasms because it's the most personal way they can be useful. It's a towering feeling to facilitate female orgasm and a dismal thing to fail. The male ego is fragile because of its vulnerability to shame, which all comes down to a man's sense of usefulness. That's why erectile dysfunction affects men so deeply. The mismatched power dynamics between men and women is problematic. Society is crystal clear about men misusing their physical strength, but the rules for how a woman should or shouldn't use her female power are more complex, opaque, and clemenlessly regulated by both institutions and other women. That is why we have women who suffer or benefit from pretty privilege. Women have it, but there are no clear rules on how and when to apply a privilege that men, unless they are rich, famous, or extraordinary, can enjoy. In conclusion, it's not a coincidence that Elon Musk has 14 living children with four women, often referred to as his baby mamas in popular discourse.
Yes, indeed. So, how are the mission of men and women influenced by the biology?
Well, all humans are target focused, but male scope and attention is more singular to the detriment of peripheral signals, while a woman's focus is more diffuse. Men are always on a mission. Vasopressin and oxytocin are both hormones that play key roles in social bonding, but they differ in their prominence and effects between men and women. In men, vasopressin is often considered the primary bonding hormone, sometimes dubbed the net teamwork hormone due to its association with fostering deep, lifelong connections, such as those seen among combat soldiers who form unbreakable bonds through their intense shared experiences. Men have significantly more vasopressin receptors in their brains compared to women, which amplifies its influence on male social behavior, cooperation, and pair bonding. In contrast, oxytocin takes the lead in women as the dominant bonding hormone, often linked to nurturing, trust, and maternal instincts, such as during childbirth and breastfeeding. While both hormones are present in everyone, the differing receptor distribution highlights how vasopressin drives male specific bonding patterns, while oxytocin shapes female relational dynamics, reflecting evolutionary adaptations in social and reproductive strategies. In short, give a man a challenge to solve, and he feels part of something that matters. Men are committed to making a positive difference in your life. He cares less about the task than about who benefits and how. The drive to earn recognition and appreciation is everything. It's not about ego, it's about earning personal worth. It's something like obtaining street cred. That's why men place a highest value on truth. In needing to know the mission, they appreciate what's real, however unsavory that reality might be. Unfortunately, women who want to avoid danger at all costs place the highest value on harmony. This makes them seek to be attractive, gentle, and charming, which can really get in the way of truth. Men want to solve a challenge together, and this applies to love. And if not clear and truthful, this denies a man the chance to bond with her on an emotional level. There's a deeper interplay of masculine and feminine energies. As a simple analogy, replace equity with the equine and consider the richness of the relationship between a rider and a horse. Men may be physically stronger than women, but so are horses. When a horse is broken in, even a young girl can ride and decide what they do, where they go, and how they'd like to get there. Crucially, even though the horse is doing the physical work, it remains a willing and grateful participant in the relationship. Perhaps that's why so many young women love riding as a sort of practice for dealing with men. The thing that many women don't seem to realize is that men positively like being steered and encouraged in ways that would offend many women. A large part of a man's attention, focus, and energy can be harnessed and directed in much the same way. Most of all, rather than feeling compromised, he'll appreciate the clarity, feel useful, and proud to be of service. In conclusion, Biology plays an important role for men who view themselves on a mission.
So, Mr. Mick, how did the ladies respond to this?
I find it interesting that several women responded to Eccleston and had both positive and negative things to suggest. Wendy Chen wrote, "It's fascinating how you managed to write 5,000 words without once ever considering that men could and should be responsible for their own sense of worth, purpose, and emotional regulation. Reducing women to external validation dispensers while dressing it up as romantic wisdom isn't insightful. It's just a long winded way to offload the hard work of emotional growth onto the nearest available woman." Chen thinks that framing women as both gatekeepers and scapegoats for male failure isn't clever, it's manipulative. That response seems harsh, but Wendy finishes with a flourish. Men are not fragile by design, and women are not emotional Sherpas tasked with carrying their partners up the mountain of basic self awareness. I'm not sure Chen's suggestion adds much, but she counters peers by stating, "Consider the possibility that the greatest gift a man can give the woman in his life isn't his usefulness, it's his accountability." I just don't see much difference in this context between usefulness and accountability. On the other hand, Sylvia M. recognizes the replicability of women in the digital age, a replacement of women, in other words. She adds, "Women's power is replaced by fast food only, fans pages, and soon robots. Men are not working tirelessly to impress women. They are working tirelessly for their ego and ambition, in which women have very little to do with at this time." The digital age, lack of sex and romance is a theme we've explored here with the explosion of sites such as OnlyFans, and I agree it has made love between men and women much more difficult. Sylvia M. makes another salient point. Men only were chivalrous when sex was withheld for ages. When it became disposable, nobody cares about anything anymore. The solution I have for myself and I suggest is spirituality, sacred sex, and the sacredness in each other. See each other as sacred and not disposable, sex as awakening. We do not need any more man children. We need presence. One digital era is definitely not chivalrous in our own age, and sex is rarely held back. Most couples rush into sex, and men are not necessarily thinking of respect and courtesy when it comes to relationships with women. Another skeptic about Piers's post is offered by Victoria Barrow, who writes, "This piece rubbed me the wrong way. While I agree that acknowledgement goes a long way, I'm sensing some things here that don't sit well with me." Barrow points out that both men and women struggle to find meaningful relationships. Both men and women can end up in bad relationships that leave them unfulfilled. Women end up more frequently killed by intimate partners. Women do not always have an abundance of great options. Many settle, stay stuck, or struggle in dating, especially when searching for something serious. Men are not doomed to lose unless they embrace a victim mentality. Healthy relationships are built on mutual effort, respect, and growth. I wish Victoria would have elaborated on the point of why women don't have options. That's the crux of love letters. Why don't women look for, engage with, and couple with good men? Finally, Karen Flodstream added positive words for Eccleston. "Greatly appreciate your point of view and see the wisdom in much of what you say. I agree, men like to rescue women, help them, and be useful. They love being valued by us just as we love being valued by them." She also pointed out that peers tactfully answered hostile respondents and even suggested, "I'm not sure all the comments deserve as much courtesy as you so generously give them. Still, if you're going to err, better to err on the side of being too kind and open than in being closed minded and unkind." It's hard to hit that elusive, perfect response, especially to criticism. Great job there, too. Flodstrom states a generational point of view since she relates that if I tell a man what I really want, he's very likely to resent any instruction. It's true that women need to become more clear about what we want. Unfortunately, it's been my experience that the men I know don't like it when I'm clear. Even when the request is made politely, lovingly, or gently, it's often received as a woman telling a man what to do. Most men I know definitely don't like the feeling of a woman telling them what to do. I haven't had very good luck at being open with men about my needs. I don't know the exact context of her comments, but many men resent clarity because it reminds them of things their mother might say to them. In conclusion, most men do not like to be told what to do by women, and many good men still respond respectfully.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Mick. So, how can we conclude this discussion?
I think we can conclude based on the Judeo Christian ethic and values such as found in America as they might relate to our topic today. From our Judeo Christian perspective, the ethic emphasizes virtue like selflessness, service, and moral responsibility. The Bible, a cornerstone of this tradition, highlights the value of being useful to others. For example, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for others. This teaching suggests that a good man is one who desires to contribute meaningfully to his community, reflecting God's purpose through acts of service and love. The question of whether good men desire to be useful would likely be answered affirmatively. Usefulness is tied to fulfilling a divine calling and living righteously. In the American context, this ethic intertwines with the nation's foundational ideals of individualism, hard work, and civic duty. The Protestant work ethic, rooted in Judeo Christian values, has long shaped the American belief that a man's worth is partly measured by his productivity and contribution to society. Thinkers like Benjamin Franklin championed industriousness and utility as virtues, while the Declaration of Independence's pursuit of happiness implies a freedom to find purpose, often being useful to family, community, or country. In this light, most men might be seen as striving for usefulness. Through cultural shifts, individualism veering towards self interest could complicate that assumption. Combining these, a conclusion might be from a Judeo Christian and American standpoint, good men do desire to be useful, as it aligns with both a moral duty to serve others and a cultural expectation to contribute to the greater good. Most men may vary in their pursuit, some may be positive, or others by personal gain or societal pressure. In conclusion, the truth about most men could thus hinge on whether their desire to be useful stems from virtue or pragmatism, a tension both traditions acknowledge but don't fully resolve.
Certainly, indeed, great episode on love letters. As Mr. Mick saying, do good men inherently desire to be useful? The truth about men, particularly those who strive for integrity and purpose, is the key often seek to contribute meaningful to their families, communities, and the world around them. So, Mr. Mick, would you like to plug in something?
If you wouldn't mind, sure, the Doctor of Digital podcast and the Idea to Author Coach on Facebook. Also, a couple books out there, Burning America and On Track. Ian Hunter, pick those up on Amazon. Until next time, stay small.
Yes, people, I want to plug in our new babies podcast or baby podcast, Mental Health 101, and its first season, people, and of course with Mr. Mick, the Doctor Digital. So please do listen, Mental Health 101, wherever you listen to podcasts. So, Mr. Mick, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good to see you, my friend.
Modicon people, see you soon.